Growing up, I learned that my mom had me when she was very young. She was a freshman in high school, and her boyfriend at the time was a senior. So she, wanting to be a normal kid, decided to give custody of me to my grandpa and grandma. Even though my real mom didn't approve, I always called them mom and dad, mostly because it just felt right. My mom was never really around after that, and no one ever talked much about my real dad. I lived with my grandpa and grandma until I was about 10 years old. One day my grandma was on the phone in the other room when she started to cry. I felt like I knew in that moment things were going to change. I knew that my grandparents and my mom had been working with lawyers to figure out my custody arrangements, and I somehow knew that I was going to have to go and live with my mom. I knew I would miss my grandparents immensely. We cried together, and 2 days later I was packed. I had to adjust to moving in with my mom, who to me was a stranger. She wasn't living a very impressive life at the time, and later I found out that that is why there was such a battle with me leaving my grandparents. They wanted me safe and didn't want me to see the things I saw. It made me not only scared, but confused. Never in my whole life had I ever felt so alone. I guess I just missed the way things used to be. I lived with my mom until I was 14. Even though I lived with my mom, I still spent every moment I could with my grandparents. If only we would have had more time together. I remember waking up one morning knowing I had to ride my bike to the orthodontist. It was July 17th. Shortly after that, I made my way to a babysitting job I had for the summer. When I walked in, I was expecting the little girl's dad to be gone already. He wasn't. He was waiting for me when I arrived and told me, "Sammy, your grandpa is very sick." I don't think I will ever forget those words, because after hearing them, I felt a vast amount of confusion. I remember thinking I had just seen him a few days earlier, and he seemed fine. Right then I knew something was wrong, because the look on his face was serious. He said, "We need to go." So I got in the car and we drove to the hospital. The whole way I cried as he held my hand trying to comfort me. But right then, nothing could have comforted me. I walked into the hospital and saw my family. Immediately, they came up to me with tears in their eyes. They just kept telling me everything was going to be okay. I looked over and saw my grandma. Just seeing her cry broke my heart. I went over and hugged her, and she held me so tight, and once again I heard those words, "It's gonna be okay." But I knew it wasn't. We went back to see how he was doing. He was in the emergency room and they were trying to manually pump him oxygen into his lungs. He was unresponsive. The last words he said to anyone were to my grandma, and that he loved her. I knew that day I wasn't only losing my grandpa, I was losing my dad, the only person who had ever been there for me like a father. 2 weeks later, my mom informed me I would once again be living with my grandma until I graduated high school. At this point in my mom's life, she was married to a wonderful man named Andrew. She had a baby 1 month before my grandpa passed away, my sister Alexis. I understand the bond that you and Samantha have, that I never will, that I now have with Alexis. This is what my mom told my grandma when she told her I could come back. From then on, I knew I was going to be with my grandma again, just like I wanted, but a little different. I didn't have my grandpa. I was having trouble in school because of the grief I felt losing my grandpa. My grandma and I decided that I should transfer schools, and we decided on ROTC. About that time, things were starting to look up for me and my grandma. I came to ROTC and didn't expect much. It was going well. I was making friends and starting to get to know people on a personal level. My grandma and I were having the best of time. I think I was taking her mind off the pain, and she was taking it off mine. The summer after, it had only been about a year since moving in with my grandma again, and my mom, out of nowhere, wanted to take me back again. This was once again hard on my grandma, and I think I cried just as hard as I did when I lost my grandpa, because I felt like I was losing her too. Within those years, mine and my mom's relationship wasn't as good as it had been. I felt like my mom was once again taking my grandma away from me. After this, I couldn't wait to turn 18. My mom started becoming controlling, to a point that scared me. I could hardly see my friends or go to basketball games. She would tell me that I seemed like I never wanted to be home. Because when I was living with my grandma, that was the only place I wanted to be or felt like I needed to be. Because I was with her. I never had the desire to go with my friends. I was happy just being with my grandma. A day after I turned 18, I made the decision to move out of my mom's house. I couldn't live with my grandma without changing schools, so now I'm living with my real dad. I know my parents didn't see it at the time, but I hope that by my leaving, my relationship with my mom would get better. It's taken a while, but it is. I miss my sisters, but now I'm able to see my grandma more than I did when I lived with my mom. And with things getting better at home, I know I can see my sisters more again too. Through all the times I've faced being stuck between my mom and my grandma, I've wished that I had a friend to help me through. Even now, as I gain more responsibilities, I think of what my grandpa would tell me. He would look at me and tell me what a wonderful person I am, and always make me feel like it was going to be okay. Thinking about my grandpa and now having my family to talk to makes everything seem easier. I try to act how my grandpa might act in a situation, how he would keep going and always try to make the best of it. He never let anyone get him down. He always smiled and made people laugh. He would help them, and it made him happy. I enjoy doing the same. He taught me a lot growing up. I learned from watching. Every time I'm in a hard place in life, I think of my grandpa and how he would want me to make it better. I've learned that life is short, and before you know it, people will miss you, and the memories you leave will have an impact on the lives around you. My grandpa left me with many memories, and from each of those memories, I have taken away a story. Everything I have gone through, I have learned not to dwell on, because it taught me something, that we all go through things, and that life is a lesson, and that everything happens for a reason. My grandpa is the person that keeps me going and reminds me to keep my head up when times get hard. Words will never express how much I miss him.